Bonjour, this is Aaron from Aaron Gone Traveling. So today I'm going to be talking about living in Melbourne, basically how life is like in Melbourne. I've been living here for the past 6 years. I initially moved to Melbourne for my university education, and since then I've been living here happily ever after since. It was the most livable city for 7 years before it was taken over by Vienna, and I was thinking to myself, if I'm gonna move to another city, I might as well choose the best. So, what is living in Melbourne really like? So, Melbourne has a temperate climate, and that means that we have 4 distinct seasons. And let me just tell you a little bit more about all these seasons and all my feelings about it. So let's start off with spring. So spring is a season where everyone take out their floral shirts and flowers are blooming and race courses are in full swing. A lot of horses are out. And I think spring is a very special season for all the Melburnians because it is the season where everyone gets dressed up to get drunk. And then we have summer. So summer, the temperature is not actually too bad, and sometimes, depending on what month it is, it can get quite cold still, especially when there's a cold wave. The only annoying thing about summer, the bushfire season, it is devastating to the Australian economy. It's just sad that almost every year we have a longer and longer bushfire season. Otherwise, the temperatures is not unbearable because the humidity is not too high. We have autumn, which is the best season in my opinion to be in Melbourne. So Melbournian streets are lined with maple trees, and that just means that when it's autumn, golden leaves are just everywhere. And then the last thing is winter, which is the most annoying season in Melbourne. It is cold in winter in Melbourne. It doesn't go sub-zero, it's not that cold, but it is cold. And the annoying thing is that it never gives us snow. If you're that cold, why don't you give us some snow? So, not the best season, in my opinion. I'm not gonna break down all the rent cost and buying houses and all those things in Australian dollar because I will dedicate another video on it. But I just want to give you a slight idea of how much you are paying for your rent. So if you're planning to stay in the CBD or like the surrounding suburbs, then you are paying around 300 to 400 Australian dollar per week for a room, sometimes a studio, excluding utilities. So 300 to 400 per week. It's not cheap. Most people would opt for outer suburbs because of cheaper rent and bigger space. It's not uncommon to find Australians who go like, oh, I want a good kitchen, a big one, and a garden with a barbie. Some even say, I want a farm, so they want space. Most of the time, people who live in the city are youngsters or people who like city living. Really, there's not a lot of family living in the city. Melbourne is built based on the hotel grid system. The CBD is basically housed in the hotel grid. CBD basically meaning Central Business District, which is the heart of everything that happens. Another thing about Melbourne is that Melbourne has got the most skyscrapers in Australia. How cool is that? You always thought it was Sydney, right? Nah, it's not Sydney. It's always Melbourne. It's always Melbourne. Melbourne City has Yarra River running across it, in the center of it, I think, and it just makes the city so picturesque. The size of Melbourne. So Melbourne is a sprawling city which houses 4.5 million people. But if you think about it, 4.5 million people is not that many people as compared to other huge metropolitan in the world like Mexico City, like Buenos Aires, like Paris, like Tokyo. But let me explain. You have got a very high population density in the city center. When you go out of the city center, the population density just decreases because everyone has got a garden, everyone has got a Barbie. Everyone has got a huge space for the family of 29. No, I'm kidding. Australia doesn't really have that many kids. I love my personal space. Depends on when. That brings me to my next point. I wouldn't say the public transport in Melbourne is the best because as compared to some Western European country, some Scandinavian country or some East Asian country, it is not the best. You have a city center where all the suburbs go towards the city center, right? What if you want to go towards the other suburbs? So you can only rely on buses. Trams only run in the inner city suburbs, so it's not the most useful if you live out of the tram zone. It's really expensive. As of now, you're paying almost $10 for a full day ticket. Right? Exactly. Now onto my favorite subject. So Melburnians come in all shapes and sizes and ethnicities and skin colors and origins, and it's just wonderful. That's what I love about Melbourne. Melbourne was initially inhabited by Wurundjeri people, which is the Aboriginal population of Melbourne. Unfortunately, nowadays, only 0.5% of the whole population of Melbourne identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander origin. About the current population in Melbourne. Do you know that Melbourne has the 10th largest immigrant population in the cities in the world? They are normally from, let me just check, India, China, United Kingdom, Vietnam, New Zealand, Italy, Sri Lanka, and Greece. There's certain neighborhoods in Melbourne that's predominantly, traditionally they were inhabited by a certain population or ethnicities. Oakley for Greek, Coburg, Middle Eastern, Turkish, Springvale, Vietnamese, Thomastown, Macedonian, or Balkan, Dandenong, South Asian, Arab, Box Hill, Chinese, Doncaster, Persian, Lygon Street, Italian. And that brings me to my next topic. If you look at the immigrating population to Melbourne, you would realize that it's effortless to find good food in Melbourne. Food in Melbourne deserves another full video on it because it won't do it any justice if I just talk about it here. Brunch is loved by many. The price, not so much. It's a common sport that Melbournians like to do it, to catch up, to talk about stuff. So to me, Australian brunch has a different meaning to me because I feel like if someone says to you, let's go brunch, it basically means that this person really appreciates you, because on top of waiting in line for a table and waiting for the food and coffee to come out and spend time with you, and this person still have to fork out $25 to $30 to spend time with you, which I think that's true friendship. I can't argue no more. One thing I like about Melbourneian drinking culture is that you start early, you end early. At least that's what they say, you never end early. So you start during happy hour after work, 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. It's really sad. It's sad hour really, because it's only 1 hour of good booze at a cheap price. So after that, you go for dinner. And most people would opt for dumplings, and I call it drunklings because people get drunk in dumpling places. The reason why people go to Chinese eateries, it's called BYO, or bring your own bottle of alcohol, when you go to a Chinese eatery, for example. Then people will start going to the bar. That will be like 9:30 or 10-ish. Some people will start lining for really famous clubs already, because if you go to that club at 11, you have to wait for 2-3 hours to get into the club. I am amazed by the work-life balance in Melbourne. So work-life balance is something that Melburnians appreciate and fight for a lot. I remember speaking to a midwife when I'm doing my obs and gynae rotation, and she was just like, I'm working too much. I'm working 3 days a week. I'm like, girl, you're just too lucky. Basically because they want to spend time with their family, or they have some sideline things they want to do, or they have some hobbies they want to pursue. Basically, work-life balance here is fantastic. Only if you're employed by the correct people. Some companies, I would not say most, but I would say a minority of the company will actually take advantage of you. Some of them illegal, which I've heard so many horror stories about. I really appreciate that I am having a good work-life balance. Like, I have time to do YouTube videos, learn French, learn Spanish, learn Portuguese. I have time to go for a day trip. I have time to cook for a whole day. I have time to spend time with my friends, talk to my family. I just think if you have a good work-life balance, you're gonna generate more productivity for yourself and the company. That's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. I post a new video every Thursday. If you are interested in food, traveling, and languages, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next week. Ciao, ciao.